Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 929, and today's date is March 27th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Now, before I get started, I just want to make two announcements. Those people who are celebrating Easter, happy Easter to everyone. Also, I uploaded the interview with Jeff Nielsen. You can go right over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight. It'll bring you right over to the video. Or you can come over to the x22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side, you'll see the video there. Or you can go to newssentinel.com, scroll down a little bit, you'll see the video on the right-hand side. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. As we continually look at all the economic indicators, we are realizing that the majority of them, 99.9999% of them, they have been declining. And if we go back to 2008, we know we've lost up to this point about 1.5, 1.6 million manufacturing jobs, and we see we gained about 1.4, 1.5 bartender, waiter, waitresses jobs. And we're starting to look at the restaurant performance index, and we reported on this about a month or so ago, and this has dropped even further. And what we're seeing right now is that this restaurant index has dropped for the fourth consecutive month in a row. And we haven't seen anything like this since the first financial crisis. And this has dropped about 3% in March. And we can see when we look at the graph, everything has been declining. It is not improving, which means restaurants are slowing. Those bartenders, waiters, and waitress jobs, they're going to start to slow also. And most likely we're going to see a lot of people out of work in that sector. So we're seeing retail where people are losing jobs. We see corporate where people are losing jobs. We see the banking sector, people are losing jobs. And now where all those jobs were shifting into those part-time bartender, waiter, waitress jobs, there we're going to see the same thing happen. And we're starting to see it happen already. And as we move along, things are getting worse and worse and not better. And when we look at the restaurant index, it looks a lot like 2008. It was one of the lead indicators back then, and we're seeing the same thing occur exactly how it happened in 2008. And each one of these economic indicators has an effect on another, and it is like a domino effect, and each one leads into the other, and before you know it, the whole system comes tumbling down. And of course the government, the central bank, will blame this on whoever they want to blame it on, because they can never accept responsibility for what happened here. Now Google, they are displaying a new message to help everyone. And what they're displaying right now is a full-page warning if a state-backed attacker attempts to access your Gmail or any other type of an account that's on Google. And they put up a message, and the message reads, the government-backed attackers may be trying to steal your password. There's a chance this is a false alarm, but we believe that the government-backed attackers may be trying to trick you to get your Google account passwords. Now, I wonder if they're going to use this when the United States government actually spies on the people. Most likely not. Most likely this message will be focused on China, on Russia, North Korea, Iran, Syria. If any of these nations are trying to do anything, this is what they're going to report. But if the government, the U.S. government, is spying on you, guess what? You will never see this message whatsoever. Now we see that in the wake of all this terrorism, where they keep pushing that, oh, they must have been using encryption, that's the problem. And we can see that most of these terrorism acts, it's an inside job. So we know they're not using the everyday iPhone. They're not using the everyday social media type of networking where they use Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or any of these things. Because if there was really a criminal, a real terrorist, they would create and use their own methods of communication to carry out whatever they're going to do. But of course, the government has their own agendas, and they're trying to convince people that you need to be spy on all the time. Now, we see that in California, which seems to be a test bed for all new legislation. And what they're going to do, since the attackers used burner phones, they want everyone who's going to purchase a throwaway phone to have ID now. Now, of course, as we know, do you think a real criminal, a real terrorist, or anyone who wants to commit some type of crime is going to walk in with their own ID, and you know the person behind the counter, they don't care. You can give them anything. It could be fake, it could be phony. It doesn't make a difference because they'll say, okay, good, I saw it. Here's your phone. No big deal. And it's the same thing that we've been going through all our lives with alcohol purchases, with cigarette purchases, with everything else. This only controls the law-abiding citizen. It doesn't affect the criminals because they always have a way around this. And this, once again, is to keep the people in line. And that's exactly what they're doing. And what's very interesting, they're pushing the law and they're saying, okay, this is going to help us with drug trafficking, modern-day slavery, terror. And they're making this whole entire list to convince everyone this is why we need this is a good idea. But guess what? It's the same thing with every other law that they pass. The criminals always find a way around it, and the law-abiding citizen is the one who suffers for it. Now, out in the Middle East, the United States now has agreed to fund a multi-million-dollar project to install an electronic security surveillance system where? Well, in Tunisia, the border of Tunisia with Libya. The U.S. is going to step in, and they're going to spend about $24.9 million to strengthen security there. The U.S. Defense Threat Reduction Agency awarded the contract to American construction group BTP and consulting and engineering firm AECOM. And according to the embassy, the project involves the installation of integrated surveillance systems using sensors and security, and they are going to close the border. Now, it's very interesting how the U.S. has the ability to spend millions of dollars installing surveillance equipment, sensors, constructing walls like they did in Turkey when Jay Johnson was out there and they were setting up surveillance, balloons, sensors, spending millions of dollars. They're doing the same in Tunisia. And here in the United States, they keep telling us it's impossible to close down the borders. It's impossible to monitor the borders. It's impossible to do any of this. Well, if we take those funds and we shifted them over here to the United States, it might be possible. But it's very interesting how it's always possible that they're always able to do this out in different areas because we know why. They're protecting their assets, their way of life, the petrodollar, their proxy armies like the Islamic State. Now, the King of Jordan is blaming Turkey for terror in Europe, and we see that it looks like at this point that they're making Erdogan the scapegoat for all of what has been happening. He's the crazy dictator. He's creating terror. And it looks like he is the new poster child for everything that has gone wrong in the Middle East. And most likely they're going to push him to spark a war. And it looks like they're heading down this path and trying to do this. Now remember, the central bankers, the U.S. government, they are just men. They are not perfect. They can't account for every variable or anomaly that occurs in the Middle East, out in Eastern Europe, in the Pacific. And when another country steps in and foils their plans, they have to regroup, recalculate, replan, and try to meet that goal. And this is what we see them continually doing. They never stop. And their goal is to remove Assad no matter what. It could be political, it could be war. However they need to do it, this is how they're going to do it. And we see that they move to different areas if they can't push their agenda in a certain area. They move on to somewhere else. They start an incident, and then they come back to that area. Because we saw this back in 2013. They had the sarin gas attack. Russia stepped in. Assad removed all the chemical weapons. The United States stepped away for a couple of months, then came back in July with the Islamic State. Came back again the next year where they started bombing inside of Syria. And we see at this point, Russia stepped in again, foiled their plans. The Islamic State is being destroyed. But this will not stop them. Right now we see hundreds of U.S. troops They have established a base in Iraq's western Anbar province, and they have set up artillery at the site, and they're monitoring the borders with Syria. Now, this is the first independent U.S. presence in the province since 2011, and we can see there are more and more troops coming into this area. Now, if the Islamic State is being beaten and they're being wiped out, why does the U.S. need more and more troops? Why do they need these bases? Why are they constructing 2 bases in Syria? Because eventually they're going to be planning something different, something out of left field to try to get Assad out of power. Now, Obama, they're bringing in more troops into U.S. Now, of course, it's not to fight the Islamic State. Most of the troops are going to the oil fields to protect the oil fields in Iraq. This has always been their main goal. And the U.S. has not changed their position on Assad whatsoever. They still want him to go no matter what. It doesn't matter how he is removed, they still want him removed. Now, the Islamic State suffers major blow in Palmyra, and we can see that Syria, with the Russian Air Force, they have bombed the entire area. They have pushed the Islamic State out of the area, and we can see they're winning in Raqqa, Deir al-Zor, in Aleppo, and they are really pushing the Islamic State, the proxy army for the United States government central bankers, out of the country. And the U.S. is backed into a corner right now. So what they're doing, they have a new focus, and we know what that is. Their new focus is Libya. Their new focus are all those areas where they're having problems, like in Yemen, in Libya we know, like in Lebanon, in Iraq, because they need to follow along with whatever the U.S. government central bankers say. And if they don't follow along, what I mean by this is they're putting the dollar on their natural resources to sell it to other countries. If they're not following along with this agenda, guess what? They are going to be removed from power. And those countries where they've risen up and they've taken over the puppet government, those areas need to be retaken. And we knew this was going to happen. We knew the U.S. was going to go back into all of these countries to reestablish puppet governments in each one of these regions. And this is why they are still using the Islamic State. Even though the Islamic State is being wiped out in Syria, they have moved them to different locations within the Middle East, into Libya, into Yemen, into Lebanon. In Iraq, they're still there. And we see at this point that there will be more false flags. Their fear tactics are not going to end because their agenda, their goals are always the same. And they're going to keep pushing and pushing because they realize and they understand if they don't do this, their way of life goes down the drain. I mean, your way of life is getting worse and worse because the economy is completely falling apart. Jobs are being lost. Retail stores are being closed down. And what they're doing right now is trying to keep everything propped up long enough to blame this on another country, another group. And it's getting tougher and tougher because Russia is not playing along with this. China is not playing along with this. And eventually what's going to happen, if these countries do not play along and start something because they're provoking, and they want these countries to do something, they're going to move to different countries like North Korea, which we see already it's happening. They're going to try to provoke Iran. But no one's going to bite. So what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to create a false flag. And what that means is they're going to have to create an attack and then blame it on that country to make it look like, yes, they did attack us. We need to go to war. And this is the path we're on right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.